Okay, now that I've given my life to Christ, what should I expect? So, I'm not gonna lie, if you just giving your life to Christ, don't expect your life to now be easier because now starts the true healing and growth process. And that healing and growth process is not just a band-aid. It's not just a bandage the same way that drinking alcohol or smoking or just forgetting about your problems or like those are all ways to bandage and allow your mind to forget about those problems. But with God, He'll begin to grow you and heal you from the inside out. So He'll begin to de-root those issues. So let's say those issues were like a seed and a tree that was planted and grows inside of you. He won't just chop the tree in half. He will pick the tree up by its roots and slowly pull it out of you so that you can truly overcome and be healed from it. And another thing you should expect is spiritual warfare. And I still need to make a video on spiritual warfare. But pretty much spiritual warfare is now that the devil sees you getting closer to God and straying farther away from Him, now he's going to attack you even harder. Now he's going to pursue you even more. But with God and with Scripture, you will be able to defeat the devil because you'll know the truth that God speaks about you and the truth that God has for you. Because the devil is the father of lies. That means everything he says is a lie. So he'll start to make you doubt God, doubt yourself, doubt that you're worthy, doubt that you're loved, doubt that God actually has a plan and a calling for you, doubt that He's real. He'll make you want to start falling back into sin, etc., etc. So he's going to start attacking you even more mentally and spiritually. But with God and seeking Him and reading the Bible, so you actually understand the truth, you will overcome it because truth beats all lies. Like, and then the third thing you should expect is a wilderness season. So a wilderness or an isolation season, it can be an isolation season or it could just be a wilderness season. But to explain what a wilderness season means, so in Exodus of the Bible, after the Israelites got taken out of Egypt, they were they were then sent to the wilderness. So they had an 11-day journey ahead of them, right? It's where they would walk through the wilderness, the desert, and then they would finally reach the promised land, right? So when you come to God, right? But like when you were still a sinner and when you weren't with God, you were now spiritually in Egypt. So you were still a slave because the Israelites were a slave in Egypt. They were slaves in Egypt, and God had to free His people. So that was you. You were a slave in Egypt, and then now that you turned to Christ, you are now in the wilderness. And what happened to the Israelites in the wilderness was they turned an 11-day journey into a 40-year journey. That's why it's important to be obedient to God. Because of their disobedience and their lack of faith and lack of trust in God, they turned it into a 40-year journey. And the reason they did that is because they were still conditioned. They were still conditioned to the slave mind that they had in Egypt and the trusting in humans, etc. So the quote unquote wilderness that you enter into, where God is trying to grow you and mold you, is a perpetual state that can be perpetuated by the individual. So you are the only one that speeds up or slows down your wilderness state. So you can be in the wilderness for 11 days as the Israelites were supposed to be, or you can be in there for 40 years. It's up to you. And the goal of the wilderness season is to have such a close and intimate relationship with God that He purifies and sanctifies you and gets rid of all of those evil things that He needed to take out of you, so that He can bring you into your next season. And when it comes to seasons, in like God's eyes and in the Bible, a season is not just spring, autumn, fall, summer, etc. A season is a time period. So it could be as short or as long as it needs to be. A season is just a time period that you're going through. You ever hear like people in like certain countries say, "Oh, we're having a dry season because it's not really raining." It doesn't mean it's summer for them. And part of our wilderness journey isn't just the devil attacking us; it's actually ourselves. Our own old patterns, our own old mindsets are what's hindering us in our wilderness season, and they are what's attacking us a lot of the time. So the devil's greatest enemy against you is yourself, because he's conditioned you so much to a point where sometimes he doesn't even need to attack you because you're attacking yourself, because you still have those old mindsets that are conditioned inside of you that God is trying to break down and rebuild you anew. So that's what the wilderness season is for. It's for him to break you down so that he can build you back up perfectly and then bring you into that next season that he wants to take you into. Because God knows if you were to carry that same trauma, that same pain, that same mindset, and them same patterns, when He brings you into that next season, you would ruin it and you would fumble it. So God is saying, I don't want to do that to you to waste your and my time and anyone else's time that I wanted to use you to help. But I need you to be at the level that you need to be at so that you can do this. If that makes sense. Don't let your own ignorance and obstinate nature prolong that journey the same way the Israelites did. Spiritual Egypt, or the world and the sinful nature that we've now left, is a system that conditions us so much so to the point that it sticks with us even when we leave it. So even when you leave it and you're now seeking God, those same things still stick with you. Similarly to like the flea experiment. So if you ever seen the flea experiment where they'll have fleas in a jar, in like a mason jar, and the lid is on top, so the fleas keep bouncing up to the jar, bouncing up, bouncing up, bouncing up, and they're hitting the top of the jar. But once they took off the lid of the jar, the fleas would still only jump to the height that the lid was at. They wouldn't jump out of the jar. When fleas can jump well over that jar, they can jump like 20, 30 feet or something. So that was them being conditioned mentally to not overcome, to not escape, to not leave this cycle, etc. So they were conditioned to failure and they were conditioned to a max level. But God is saying, I'm going to show you who you truly are and what and who you truly can be, so that you can see the greatness that I can bring you to. Because the same way us from a human perspective will see other fleas and be like, bro, these fleas can jump 20, 30 feet. Why are they only jumping like however high that mason jar is? God is saying, I've done this with other people, so I can do this with you as well. I can recondition you to be able to reach your maximum potential, which is a 30 feet jump instead of just the height of a mason jar, which is what you've capped yourself at because the world told you this is the max you can reach. If you don't know how to let go and be malleable and allow God to change and mold you, then your wilderness season will last forever. You ever been in a classroom and then you're like everyone's being bad, like you're being bad, all your friends, and then the teacher is like, I'll wait. So then the teacher stops instructing, stops teaching you, and then waits for you to lock back and focus on them, and do what they need you to do, so that they can continue to teach you and help you. But however long you continue to do your foolishness is how long the teacher will wait. So if you, after the teacher says I'll wait, you stop after a second, then you'll be right back and focused. But if you still continue to take 30 minutes of foolishness, then once the bell rings, the teacher's gonna say, "Where are you going?" The bell doesn't dismiss you. I dismiss you. So now you're still stuck when your obedience would have gotten you out way sooner. You can be, and a lot of us have been institutionalized by our parents or our environment since we were children. And so that's why even when we leave our parents' house, whether we go to school, like high school, college, middle school, uh, after college, whatever, however old you are, that's why those things still stick with us, even though we've left our parents' houses. Those same institutionalized things that we've learned from our environment as children still stick with us, even when we long leave that environment. We could move 30 states away, and those same mindsets and patterns will still stick with us. That's the same way it was for the Israelites in Egypt. And that's also why a lot of people will have therapy. But God is saying, you don't need therapy, you need me, because I will deroot those issues for you and I will take those away. And you'll only get as much from God that you seek. So if you're only seeking God 5 minutes a day, you'll only get 5 minutes of God. If you're seeking Him uh, like an hour every 2 weeks, you only get an hour every 2 weeks of God. And you're not in the wilderness waiting for God to change your wilderness. The wilderness is about God using the wilderness in the isolation period to change you. And until you change in that wilderness, your wilderness won't change. The purpose of the wilderness is for God to shut down every other option so that you realize that your best option is seeking God and it's nothing else. And by abiding in Him and seeking Him long enough to stay there and be transformed in your heart and by the renewing of your mind, then you will escape the wilderness season. Until you're fully obedient with God and He's transformed you enough, you will not escape your wilderness season. But you can prolong it based on how obedient and how much you truly seek Him. God bless you.